She didn't look like a threat. That was her first weapon. The gray sweater, the thrift store jeans, the scuffed sneakers. It all painted a picture no one would pause to examine. On a dusty civilian range just outside Barstow, California, she looked like someone's aunt. Maybe a librarian who got curious about handguns. Not a single head turned when she checked in. Not until she fired. The shot cracked the air like a whip. Then silence. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The bullet punched a perfect hole in the dead center of the bullseye, not a hair off. The clipboard in the instructor's hand still mid-mark. The man in the next booth, a guy with wraparound sunglasses and the attitude of a backyard commando, chuckled under his breath. Beginner's luck, he muttered loud enough for others to hear. She didn't answer, just calmly loaded another round. The crowd at the edge of the range shifted slightly, a ripple of curiosity rising. Who was she? She hadn't spoken a word since stepping up to the line. Her dark hair was tied back in a low, no-nonsense bun. A pair of reading glasses sat gently on the bridge of her nose. She didn't fidget. Her breathing never changed, but her hands. They were unervingly still, not the kind of stillness you get from calm, but from experience that unsettled the instructor more than the shot. "Ma'am," he called out, stepping a little closer. "If you're done, we've got others waiting." She didn't even glance his way. Just pulled the trigger again. Crack. Bullseye. Crack. Bullseye. Crack. She was writing poetry in lead. Some of the regulars whispered. One of them elbowed another and scoffed. Housewife's having her Rambo moment. But a man at the far edge of the range didn't laugh. He watched, eyes narrowing. His boots were dusty. His stance relaxed, but the insignia on his chest said otherwise. Special Forces, a Navy SEAL. Judging by the subdued trident patch half hidden under his jacket. Captain Aaron Blake. He didn't care about her aim. Not exactly. He cared about the ink barely visible beneath the rolled cuff of her sweater. Just a peak, a tattoo most civilians would miss. But not him. 2 interlocked daggers over a skull, wreathed in laurel. Aaron's breath caught. That wasn't a decoration. It was a brand. The Ghost Battalion. They weren't supposed to exist, an off-the-books unit. Black Ops so deep the Pentagon barely whispered their names. Ghosts, no records, no ranks, only scars and stories passed through fire and silence. Aaron had heard those stories in Kabul, in Marja, in a shivering hut on a mission that left more body bags than answers. And that mark? That mark was supposed to be buried with them. So what the hell was it doing here? Aaron took a step forward. The instructor's voice cut in again, firmer this time. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to. She can stay," Aaron said calmly. The range went still again. The instructor blinked. "Sir, with all respect." She can stay," Aaron repeated, stepping beside her booth. The woman didn't thank him, didn't even smile, just nodded once. The same way a soldier acknowledges a comrade's order when both know the stakes without saying a word. Aaron slipped into the booth next to hers, loaded his own weapon, but his mind was nowhere near the target. "You don't see many ghosts anymore," he murmured, not looking at her. She didn't respond, just shifted her stance, steadying her. Aaron's mouth was dry. "I lost good men on a mission in Kandahar. Extraction failed. They sent a ghost team in. Only one came back. No names, no commendation. Just a mark on an arm." He let the words hang. "You know the one, still." She said nothing. But when she fired again, bullseye, he noticed it. Just for a breath. A pause in her rhythm. Barely half a heartbeat, but to Aaron, it said everything. She knew. She remembered. Aaron's voice softened. "My brother was one of the ones saved that night. You probably don't even know it, but I've spent years trying to find the one who got him out." She kept firing. Clean, smooth, surgical. He lowered his weapon. "They say ghosts don't talk, but if you ever meet one, you should thank them. even if they won't accept it. For the first time, her hand paused. A small one, no theatrics, but it was a pause. Aaron caught it, and he understood. They also say ghosts only reveal themselves when they choose to, he added gently. She finally spoke. Her voice was quiet, measured, but it sliced deeper than any bullet. Stories grow in silence. The truth gets buried beneath them. Aaron closed his eyes. He had heard rumors, whispers over radios in midnight blackouts about the one ghost who walked away. No debriefing, no return, just vanished. He opened his mouth to speak again, but someone else beat him to it. The same man from earlier, the chuckler, came stomping. Back over, chest puffed up, ego wounded. You know, lady, he barked. Some of us are here to actually learn. You can't just hog the booth like you own the place. The instructor shifted, unsure. Sir, no, she's done, the man barked. Probably some cop's wife who got bored at brunch. He stepped forward and reached for her arm to shove her aside. She didn't move, but neither did Aaron. He watched carefully, not because he wouldn't step in, but because he didn't need to. The woman's sleeve slipped up slightly, and for the first time, the full mark was visible. The daggers, the skull, the laurel. Aaron's heart pounded, but the idiot didn't notice. He was too busy trying to look. Tough. Move along, Grandma. He sneered then, in a single, fluid motion. She pivoted, disarmed him of the pistol at his hip, and pointed it squarely at his chest. No anger, no flare, just terrifying precision. The man froze. Aaron raised his hand. Easy. The woman calmly ejected the magazine, flipped the weapon in her grip, and handed it back to the man. Keep your weapon holstered, she said, until you're ready to carry the weight of it. The man's face burned red. He stormed off. Nobody followed. Nobody laughed. Only silence remained. Aaron watched her, his throat thick. I looked up every file from that night, he said. Quieter now. There were no names, just whispers. They said the ghost who made it out never went back in. She didn't look at him, just stared ahead. But finally, she replied. Her voice was soft, cold, distant. Some battles are easier to fight when no one is watching. Aaron's throat burned. He didn't know her name, but he knew something that few people ever got to see. A ghost had returned, and she wasn't here to prove anything, just to remember what it felt like to hold a weapon, without needing to use it, not for war, not for orders, just to remember the weight, and maybe to remind someone like Aaron what that weight really meant. She disappeared into the background, the way only someone trained to vanish truly could. Aaron watched her slip past the booths, past the instructor still frozen in place, and past a dozen confused shooters who didn't know whether they just witnessed an accident or a message. She moved like someone who'd done it 1,000 times, not in public, not at ranges like this, but in darker places, in tighter quarters, in countries that didn't exist on paper. She didn't look back. Aaron wanted to follow, wanted to speak, but something told him she didn't owe him a conversation still. His legs moved on their own. Outside the gates, the parking lot shimmered in the afternoon heat. Dust kicked at the edges of concrete. A single white sedan waited at the edge of the lot. Old, clean, anonymous. The kind of car you'd pass in a Walmart parking lot and forget before you blinked. She reached it just as he caught up. You walked away, he said. She opened the door, didn't turn. I'm not here to bring you in or ask for anything. Still. Nothing. Aaron hesitated. But I remember the mission, Kabul? February 2012. The convoy got hit 2 miles south of Checkpoint Archer. No support. 10 SEALs trapped. She paused. Just barely. Aaron's voice caught. Only one woman walked in. None of us knew who she was. She dragged 2 of us out under fire. Bleeding, didn't speak, didn't radio, just pointed toward the tree line and disappeared. Her hand rested on the open door, still not moving. My brother was one of the 2. The silence cracked slightly. Something behind her shoulders eased. Just a bit. He coded twice on the flight out. They said another minute and he wouldn't have made it. Erin's throat tightened. I've been carrying that minute ever since. She finally turned. Just enough for him to see her eyes. Not cold, not hostile, just tired. I wasn't supposed to make it out, she said. You did. Only. Pieces did. Erin nodded slowly. I'm not here to rewrite your story. I just wanted you to know. Someone remembered, and someone's still watching. She held his gaze for a long moment. Then, something flickered in her eyes. Not trust, but recognition. The kind that passes between people who've both been to the same war, even if they were never on the same battlefield. You know what we were told before that mission? She said. Erin shook his head. If you're lucky, your name won't survive this. She looked back toward the range, and that was the most honest part of the briefing. Erin's breath caught. She slid into the car, closed the door. Gently, drove away without a sound, but her words stayed. That night, he found himself staring at the ceiling of his base quarters, unable to sleep. He opened a file on his tablet. Not an official one. There were no files for the Ghost Battalion, just a personal folder, fragments, testimonies, redacted mission briefs, satellite photos. He'd been collecting them for years. It wasn't about proof. It was about witnessing. He scrolled to the report from February 12, 2012. Convoy Alpha ambushed near Checkpoint Archer. No air support, no reinforcements. SEAL team pinned for 46 minutes. Then nothing. Just a 4-word addition someone had scribbled in pencil during a backroom debriefing. Ghost intervention suspected. No ID. Erin stared at those words. She had no name, but he had a face now, a voice, and a sentence that wouldn't leave his head. Keep your weapon holstered until you're ready to carry the weight of it. The next morning, Erin returned to the range. Not to shoot, to ask. The instructor spotted him immediately. Sir, if this is about yesterday, I didn't know who she was. She ever come here before? The man hesitated. Once or twice, always low profile. Never said much, paid in cash. Never signed up for membership. Used her own ammo. Cleaned her own brass. Leave a name? No, sir, Erin exhaled. She say where she was from? Had. Plates from Oregon. Erin blinked. That was something. She ever talked to anyone? The instructor scratched the back of his head. One time, I overheard her on the phone. She said something about checking the perimeter. I thought it was weird, like she was back on patrol or something. Erin nodded. That tracked. He stepped away, already pulling up maps on his phone. Oregon, rural, mountains, plenty of places to disappear. Ghost liked quiet, stillness, not because it was peaceful, but because nothing crept up on you when the world was still. 2 days later, he found the lead not from official channels, but from someone who once served in Delta, a man with burn scars down half his neck who owed Erin a favor. She used to go by Keller. The man said, Keller's not real, obviously, but I heard she retired out by Crater Lake, changed her name, bought a cabin, doesn't talk to anyone. Why? The man shrugged. You carry enough ghosts. Eventually, you start living like one. It took another 3 days to find the cabin. Unlisted road, no mailbox, no Wi-Fi, no signal. Erin hiked the last mile in silence. When he reached it, dusk had started to bleed across the treetops. The cabin was modest, wood-framed, no lights on. But someone was home. He didn't knock. Just waited on the porch. Eventually, the door creaked open. She stepped out, arms folded. You followed me, I asked around. You don't give up. Ghosts don't, either. A pause. Then she stepped aside, leaving the door open. He entered quietly. Inside, everything was neat, clean, sparse. A cot, a shelf of old paperbacks. A single pistol locked in a box on the table. No TV, no distractions, just walls lined with quiet. I don't want medals, she said as he sat. I didn't bring any. Not looking for closure. I didn't ask for it. Another beat. Aaron looked at her. Really looked. She wasn't just tired. She was worn. Not from age, but from weight. Invisible weight. The kind that doesn't show in a mirror but hangs on you all the same. I wanted to say thank you again, he said softly. You already did. I needed to say it twice. She looked away toward the trees. I still hear the shots sometimes, she admitted. Me. Too. I hear the ones I fired. And the ones I didn't. Aaron didn't reply. Some things didn't need answering. I didn't leave the field because I broke, she said. I left because I didn't want to forget what peace felt like. He nodded. But you never forget. Do you? She asked. No. The air thickened. Aaron leaned forward slightly. I'm not asking you to come back. Good, she said, half smiling. Because I wouldn't, he returned the smile. But if you ever want to be remembered, not as a ghost, but as someone who made it home, I'd like to help with that. Her eyes softened. I never needed remembering, she said. Just understanding. Aaron stood. Slowly. Then I'll carry it. That weight. The one you don't want to anymore. She said nothing. But this time, as he stepped outside, she followed him to the door, and for a moment, under the fading gold of Oregon's sky, the ghost stepped into the light. Why would someone trained to vanish ever let herself be seen? Aaron couldn't stop asking himself that as he drove down the winding forest road, the cabin vanishing in his rear view, she had let him in, not just into the cabin, but into the silence she'd lived in for years. That wasn't nothing, and that pause, that flicker of something in her voice when she said, I hear the ones I didn't fire, that was the real battle. She hadn't walked away from war because she couldn't fight anymore. She walked away because she couldn't keep carrying the weight of when she didn't. 2 weeks passed. Aaron went back to the base. Back to meetings, briefings, training every time he stepped onto a range. The sound of her voice echoed in his memory. Keep your weapon holstered until you're ready to carry the weight of it. He found himself scanning for signs of ghosts everywhere. Not the unit, but the people. The ones who'd been too good at what they did to ever talk about it. The ones who stayed quiet at the back of the room, who didn't need recognition, who had seen too much to want it. Then one day, his phone buzzed. An unknown number. He hesitated, picked up. Her voice, calm and clear, came through. You said you'd carry it. Did you mean that? Aaron's heart jumped in his chest. Yes. Then come meet someone. Click. No location. No explanation. But the next morning, a note slid under his office door. Handwritten, coordinates, and a time. It was a training facility. Decommissioned. Hidden in the foothills, used once by off-grid units for rehearsals before missions that never happened on record. Aaron arrived to find the gate already open. She was there, waiting, but she wasn't alone. 3 others stood with her, all older. One missing 2 fingers, another with burn scars curling up his neck. The last, a woman with sharp eyes and a stillness that felt like a razor beneath a velvet glove. No names were given. Aaron stood silent as the woman, the one from the range, turned to him. You asked why I let you see the mark. He nodded. You weren't supposed to, she said. But I did on purpose. Why? Because ghosts are dying, not just the people, the stories. The man with the burned scars nodded. They're rewriting history with medals and press releases. But the real ones? The ones that cost more than anyone wants to admit? They're disappearing, Aaron understood. They didn't want recognition. They wanted truth, and that meant memory. She handed him a folder inside. 4 pages, handwritten. One for each of them. Not a mission log, not a resume. Just moments, glimpses. One had written about the time they had to stand over the body of a comrade for 6 hours in silence so it wouldn't be left behind. Another wrote about translating a message from a hostage in Morse code, tapped out in foot movements while pretending to be unconscious. But her page, It was different. No operations, just this. Once, I carried a child through a minefield. They never knew. They thought I was rescuing them from fire. But it wasn't fire I feared. It was silence. That's where minds live, where decisions echo forever. I walked slowly, because each step had to matter. I've never moved that carefully since. I don't think I ever will again. Aaron closed the folder. His hands were trembling. I can get these archived, he said quietly. Classified, secured, not for medals. Just for history. She nodded. No names, no unit, just a record that we existed. And if someone finds it? He asked. She looked him dead in the eyes. Then maybe they'll understand the cost of silence. The following weeks blurred. Aaron began working behind the scenes. Quiet calls, off-record meetings, pulling in favors for men and women who once owed their lives to names they never knew. He wasn't trying to make them famous, just seen respected. A hidden archive began to form, built into a subdirectory so deep it didn't ping anything public. But it was real, secure, invisible, like the ghosts who filled it. And then, one evening, he received a call from his brother. You ever find out who pulled me out that night? His brother asked, voice calm but curious. Aaron paused. Yeah, a long silence. Did you thank them? His brother asked. Aaron smiled faintly. Once, then again, then not enough. Back at the cabin, she stood at the edge of the tree line, watching the sun dip low. The weight never left her. But something had shifted. She no longer carried it. Alone, inside her cabin, the locked pistol box remained untouched. She hadn't opened it since the range. She didn't need to. That day had served its purpose. Not to shoot, but to remember how steady her hands could still be. To remind herself she wasn't broken, just paused. And one night, weeks later, Aaron received a small package. Inside was a single bullet casing, polished, etched with 5 numbers, the coordinates of Checkpoint Archer. No, just that. He understood immediately. It wasn't a souvenir. It was a marker, a grave, a memory, and a promise. Some truths don't get shouted. They don't wave flags. They don't wear ribbons or headline documentaries. Some truths just breathe, quietly, steady, waiting for someone to ask, waiting for someone to listen. And sometimes a ghost will let herself be seen, not because she wants to be remembered, but because something bigger, something heavier, needs to be passed on. Why did she keep the pistol locked away if her hands still remembered how to use it? Some nights she would sit on the porch long after the last light left the sky. The woods would hum around her, wind through pines, an occasional owl, the distant call of something wild. But her stillness? That was the quietest thing of all. The pistol remained sealed in its box. She hadn't unlocked it since the day at the range. It wasn't about fear. It was about control. She once told herself she'd only ever open it again if silence wasn't enough. But lately, the world had been growing louder, not in noise, in forgetting. Aaron sat across from a Pentagon official. The room was windowless, concrete, a place where questions were supposed to die unanswered. He laid down a sealed envelope. It wasn't protocol. It wasn't permission. It was a challenge. Inside were scans of the pages she and the others had given him, personal accounts from missions that had no names, no medals, no rank, only blood, sand, and memory. This doesn't exist, the official said flatly. Aaron leaned forward. It should. The man didn't respond. But hours later, Aaron received a secure message. A single line. Build it quietly. The archive was born. Hidden beneath a shell program in a system no one outside a classified circle could access. No index, no search function, only a set of coordinates. Names stripped, just stories. Pieces of something bigger. Aaron named it the perimeter. Not as a nod to security, but to memory, because some things were worth standing watch over, even if no one else knew you were there. She sat at the edge of a clearing that night, miles from her cabin, watching a fire she'd built burn low across. From her sat the woman with razor eyes, the one who'd stood beside her at the training facility weeks ago. "You told him the truth?" The woman asked. "Enough." The other woman tossed a twig into the fire. "He's trying to preserve it, what we were. He thinks he's protecting something." "He is." She said nothing for a moment. The flames danced against her eyes. "You ever think about the mission?" She asked quietly. "The extraction?" "No. The last one. The one they never signed off on." The woman across from her exhaled, long and slow. "I think about the sound before it started. That pause, like the earth was holding its breath. I still hear it." They both fell silent, then she said, "Sometimes I wonder if we were supposed to come back at all." "You did," the woman said. "Pieces did. Same pieces that saved people." She didn't argue. But she didn't agree either. Aaron received a call 3 days later. A Marine he'd never met, voice tight, careful, said he'd heard, through someone who knew someone, that Aaron was building a file, something sacred, for ghosts. Then, the Marine paused. "My team was pulled from a black site in 2009. A ghost unit cleared the path. We never saw faces. But we all lived because someone out there took a shot in the dark for people they didn't know." Aaron asked, "Why are you calling now?" The Marine was quiet then. "I had a kid last year. Makes you look at silence differently." He sent over a voice memo, a simple retelling, no drama, just a man trying to keep a moment alive. Aaron added it to the perimeter. The stories were growing, not loud but steady, just like her hands. Back in Oregon, she finally opened the box. Not because she needed the pistol, but because memory was beginning to call louder than fear. She stripped the weapon down on the table, piece by piece, as if reacquainting herself with an old friend. The metal was cold, smooth. It was hers, still. But as she reached the chamber, she paused. Her fingers hovered. She closed her eyes. Then, gently reassembled the weapon. She didn't load it. She didn't need to. Knowing it still worked was enough. Later that week, she visited an old contact, a man who ran a survivalist store on the edge of the valley. Most thought he was a conspiracy. Dearest, she knew better. He was ex-CIA, and he still owed her a favor. "You need something?" he asked, eyeing her quietly. "No," she replied. "I have something to give." She handed him a sealed envelope. Inside was a set of encrypted files, stories, coordinates, echoes. "Deliver this to someone named Aaron Blake." No questions. He studied her. "Why now?" "Because truth isn't for the living. It's for those who come after." Then she left. The man didn't stop her. He never did. He knew better than to question a ghost when she moved with purpose. Aaron received the package a week later inside. More stories, more memories, some typed, some handwritten. One photo, faded. 4 silhouettes in desert gear. Faces turned away from the camera. Sunset behind them, on the back. One line, "Not all heroes wear medals. Some wear silence." Aaron stared at it for a long time, then carefully. He slid the photo into a sleeve and filed it under a subfolder labeled Unseen. That night, Aaron stood alone on the training range. Target paper flapped in the wind. The booth beside him was empty. He loaded one round. Fired, it hit wide. Off-center, he didn't curse. He didn't fire again. Instead, he closed his eyes and whispered, "Some carry the stories." Back in her cabin, she stared at the bullet casing she'd once sent him, now returned. Resting on her table, it had been re-etched, same coordinates. But now with one more line underneath. Still watching, she smiled faintly. Not because she needed validation, but because someone, somewhere, still remembered the weight and still chose to carry it. Not in blood, but in truth. Some ink is just decoration. Hers was a warning. It had faded over time, not from neglect, but from weather, sun, sweat, missions that blurred borders and names. The tattoo sat just under her shoulder blade, curved like a question mark in motion. Most never saw it. Those who did never forgot. The SEAL commander had stared too long, and not because of the art, because of what it meant, not who she was now, but who she used to be. The briefing room at the secure training compound had a hush to it. Even though it was full of chatter, 3 SEAL teams were gathered. Maps on screens, boots scuffing tile, tension humming like static. They were preparing for an upcoming urban infiltration exercise. Simulated, yes, but only in the legal sense. The opposition force would be live, unpredictable, shadow-run by someone with real-world history. Opposing force lead has full discretion, the instructor said. Name? One SEAL asked. The instructor tapped the screen. No photo, no service record. Just a code name. Phantom, a pause, chuckles. Until the commander looked closer and stopped breathing for a moment. Phantom. He hadn't heard that name in years. Not since no, it couldn't be. But deep down, he knew. Back at her cabin, she was lacing her boots. Not standard issue, custom, broken in like an old dog. She always said, if you couldn't trust your step, you couldn't trust your aim. Her phone buzzed, an encrypted message, one line. You're greenlit, full force, ghost rules. She stared at it, then walked outside. The wind carried the smell of cedar and burnt powder. She adjusted her collar, grabbed her gear, and locked the door behind her. Not because she feared theft, because once she left, she wouldn't be back for a while. Some ghosts don't haunt. They intervene. The SEALs landed at the Mock City compound. It was a facility that looked like a Middle Eastern village on one side, Eastern Europe on the other. Built for chaos, for pressure. Mission objective: extract a simulated asset, retrieve a package, and neutralize resistance. They expected tactical puzzles, maybe resistance from trainers in masks. What they got was different. 30 minutes in, the lead SEAL team was pinned, not by gunfire, by movement. They didn't even see her, but their comms started glitching. Decoys in their periphery, targets vanishing, maps changing. It was like the place was being rewritten. In real time, she was orchestrating it from rooftops and shadows. Her voice came over their comms. Not mocking, not taunting, just calm. You hesitated at the stairwell. Why? The SEAL paused. What? 5 seconds? That's 2 lives, minimum. Try again. Then silence. No Argent trace. No follow-up. Back at ops, the commander stood at the tactical board, watching the live feed. She's doing more than simulating. One of the techs said quietly, she's hunting. Not them, the commander corrected. Their assumptions. Later that night, the SEALs regrouped in the makeshift safe house. Morale was fractured. The youngest among them, Callan, looked shaken. She knew I was gonna zig before I moved, like she was watching my breath, another replied. She doesn't follow rules, she teaches consequences. And still, no one had seen her face, only movement, wind, precision. And that symbol, quick glimpse on a shoulder once. Some sort of curve, almost tribal. But the commander knew what it was. It was a falcon. Mid-dive, claws forward, one eye missing. He'd seen it inked on the shoulder of a woman in Kabul, years ago. The woman who walked alone out of the safe house with 11 hostages on foot. No backup, no orders. The woman who disappeared after her mission was redacted. The woman he'd once tried to recruit and was told she doesn't belong to anyone anymore. She lay prone on a rooftop, night vision off, breath slow, watching them regroup, learning their patterns. Not to embarrass them, but to teach them something no manual ever could. The mission isn't won by force. It's won by stillness, by timing, by knowing when to not take the shot. Because when you have the advantage, restraint is louder than noise. The exercise ended in failure, officially. Asset lost, team scattered, but the post-brief told a different story. Callan requested a copy of the footage, not for pride, but to learn. Another SEAL requested a second run. Same offer, he said. I want to try again. I need to. The commander approved it, not because it would make a difference to the scorecard, but because it mattered to the soul. She returned to her cabin 3 days later. Unmarked, untouched, but different, because this time she didn't go straight inside. She walked to the edge of her porch, stared at the horizon, and whispered, not to herself, but to the air, "You're getting closer, Aaron." Then she opened her laptop, typed a set of numbers, unlocked a folder labeled KIA, Wraith Protocol. Inside was a single name, Commander Blake, Aaron, and next to it, status, revived. She sent one message, "Let them come, I'll be here." Some call it survival, others call it instinct. She never named it. She just knew when a shadow moved wrong and when an ally turned silent. The second run was different. This time, the SEALs came prepared. Maps studied, patterns adjusted. They didn't underestimate her anymore, but that was never the point. She wasn't trying to win. She was trying to expose what they feared most. Failure that came without warning. She watched them from above. Rain falling in sheets, boots sloshing through. Puddles as they swept the compound. No come interference this time. She'd let them breathe. Let them think, but not for long. A wire snapped in a corner tower. One of the team flinched, raised his rifle too fast, and tripped the sensor. A silent alarm blinked red. Too late. A drone dropped smoke at the south entrance, precisely where their exit route had been. Their map rerouted itself before their eyes. What the hell is this? Callan asked. She's rewriting the mission during the mission. Someone muttered. In the control room, Commander Aaron Blake stared at the screen. Arms folded, he'd seen this kind of psychological warfare before. It wasn't just intel. It was intuition. The kind that wasn't taught, only earned. She was dragging their instincts out, exposing them like nerves under cold air. Meanwhile, in the tower above, she pulled back her hood. Rain soaked her braid. She clicked a small device. Replay feed began. The SEALs were now moving based on false timestamps. Every door they opened, every alley they swept. She had been there 20 minutes earlier. She wasn't just ahead, she was past tense. The SEALs found the asset hidden in a basement, but as they reached her, the lights went red. Too late. The voice echoed from a speaker. You fought the building, not the ghost. Back at Ops? The commander leaned forward, fingers pressed to his temple. He hadn't spoken much during the second run. Not out loud, at least. He knew her style, knew her rhythm, and something about it felt changed, not just sharper, darker, colder, as if this wasn't just a drill for her anymore. Later that night, a classified call came to the base, a general, tone low. Are you monitoring the Phantom? We are, Blake answered. She's pushing the edges of containment, the voice warned. We greenlit her to train teams, not resurrect ghosts. Aaron looked away. She's not resurrecting anything, he said, but he wasn't sure. Meanwhile, she sat in her cabin, lights off, tattoo visible in the dim blue glow of her screen. She opened the Wraith Protocol file again, scrolled past names, operations buried under layers of encryption, and paused. At one line, Operation Backwater Halo, terminated by Commander Blake. Her jaw tightened. Flashback. Dust. Wind. A remote village burning in the distance. She carried a wounded asset across her shoulders. Radio screaming. Abort, abort, extraction canceled. Her voice. I have eyes on the boy. He's still alive. Silence. Then Blake's voice. You are to leave the target. You've been compromised. Her reply. Compromise me all you want. I'm not letting another kid die. She made it out, he made it out, but her file was sealed and her clearance revoked because she disobeyed, because she chose to care. Back to present. She closed the file, looked at the night outside, then whispered into the silence. He's watching me. The next day, Aaron stood at the range, not the official one, hers. The secluded outdoor clearing behind her cabin. She was already there, cleaning her weapon with rhythmic grace. He didn't say anything for a while. Just watched. Finally, why'd you reopen that protocol? She didn't flinch, because it was never finished. You were pulled. There was a reason. I know. Then why dig? She set her rifle down gently, turned, and for the first time in over a decade, looked him in the eyes. Because you lied about what we found. Aaron's face tightened. Not anger, not guilt. Just the weight of too many things unspoken. She stepped closer. You told them I compromised the mission. I told them you saved a life. But not which life, she said. A long pause. Then she unbuttoned her sleeve, revealed a fresh tattoo under. The old falcon ink. A new line of coordinates. The place where Operation Backwater Halo ended, but something new etched beneath it. Still breathing. You kept him alive, she whispered. I found him last month. Aaron stepped back. Breath shallow. You? She nodded. He remembers you. The air between them grew heavier. He looked away. I made the call because we were burning. I had no other option. I know, she said softly. But now we have a choice. And just like that, the mission changed again. No longer just a drill. No longer just revenge. It was personal. And the SEALs? They were about to be pulled into a real-world operation. One they weren't trained for. Because ghosts weren't just watching anymore. They were planning. There are missions. And there are debts. Some written in ink, some in blood. But the ones that matter? They're etched into silence. Operation Backwater Halo, the name returned. Whispers in the Pentagon. Tactical briefings turned vague. Commanders folding papers when the word came up, because it wasn't just a mission. It was a failure disguised as a success, or a success buried under betrayal. She didn't tell the SEALs the full truth, not yet. She just told them the simulation had changed, that the next run would be field-integrated, live terrain, real structures. Tactical risk factors present, but no bullets, not yet. They were confused, but followed orders, even Callan, even West. Something about her presence now had shifted, less like an instructor, more like a shadow they didn't want behind them. The site was 200 miles out, desert ridges, a ghost village rebuilt. From scattered recon images of the original Backwater Halo site, she remembered every corner, every broken wall, every room where a child cried and a radio stayed silent in the transport convoy. Aaron Blake sat quietly beside her. The others thought. He was observing. Truth was, he was reconciling, watching her hands twitch, watching her eyes flicker to the same map coordinates over and over again. She wasn't simulating anything anymore. She was reliving it. Why now? He asked quietly. She didn't respond at first, then softly. Because he asked if you were still alive, Aaron turned. The boy? She nodded. He said he remembered the voice that told me to leave him. He wanted to know if the voice still had a name. Aaron swallowed hard. The SEALs unloaded, securing the perimeter, but when they stepped into the mock compound, they froze. The walls weren't foam board training models. They were stone, dust, rusted pipes, bloodstains that weren't theatrical. This wasn't a recreation. It was preserved. Where the hell are we? West asked. She didn't answer. She just walked to the center of the compound, kneeled, ran her fingers over the dirt, and whispered. He was here. Right here. The SEALs gathered close. She stood slowly, facing them. You've all asked why you're here. Why this training feels different. You're right, she said. It's not training anymore. She turned to the wall and pulled off a tarp. Behind it, a board full of photos, not of insurgents, but of civilians, children, doctors, interpreters. 5 of them survived that day. One made it out alive because someone disobeyed a direct order. She looked at Blake. He's in hiding, now hunted, because of something he remembers. Callan stepped forward. You said this was a simulation. It was, she said, until yesterday. What changed? She tapped her tablet. A satellite image flicked on. A convoy, armed, masked, moving through a ravine north of the old village. They're looking for him. And they're not local. Aaron finally stepped in. This is off books. You all know that. You stay. You do it under full blackout. No comms, no logs, no medals. Or, he added, you can leave right now. No consequence. The wind moved, silent. No one moved. She pointed to a ridge. That's where I'll be. She handed. Callan the rangefinder. I won't be near you, but if you're pinned. Look to the west. I only fire once. Callan stared at her. You're serious? She smiled. The faintest hint of mischief. You've never seen what I do when it's real. That night, the team dug into the compound's new layout. Set. Motion detectors, booby traps, escape routes, silent signals. The ground was old, dry, but under her touch. It came alive again. Memories breathing beneath the sand. Hours before sunrise, she took position on the ridge. Wind slicing her cheek. Her rifle. Not the simulation gear. The real one. Custom-tuned, barrel-worn like a familiar glove. The same one she used a decade ago. Through her scope, she saw them. 2 trucks. Dark green. No headlights. Moving like ghosts. They weren't here for recon. They were here for confirmation. The kind that ended in death. Below, the SEALs moved into position. Silent, precise, focused. But she watched West hesitate at a corner. Too long. She clicked once into her mic. No words. Just a single click. He moved instinctively. She was already inside their heads. The first shot wasn't hers. It came from the enemy, a silencer, missed by inches. The SEALs hit the dirt. Callan shouted, West, rear guard. But West didn't reply. Another shot. Then, silence. She spotted the muzzle flash. Far back, deep behind a broken water tank. Her breathing slowed. Arch still, wind at 8 knots. Slight southeast pull. She adjusted. 1 notch left, held her breath. Then boom. The shot echoed like a thunderclap across the valley. 1 body dropped. Then chaos. Return fire erupted, and from the ridge, her voice finally came through. West is alive. Move to phase 2. Inside the command tent. Aaron Blake stared at her vitals. Her heartbeat hadn't changed. Not even during the kill shot. She's not teaching, he whispered. She's remembering. Some missions end with medals, some with silence. This one would end where it began, at the edge of memory. And in the shadow of a tattoo, no one dared question anymore. The firefight had lasted 6 minutes. 3 tangos down, 2 retreated. West was alive, but barely. A round had grazed his ribcage, cutting deep but missing bone. She watched it all from the ridge, her scope tracing not threats, but fears. The kind that stalk in silence, the kind that wear old uniforms and new orders. When the dust settled, Aaron called in the medevac, unofficial, unlogged. It was Blake's name that made it happen, and hers. That made them hurry. At dawn, the SEALs gathered at the broken center of the compound, the same place the boy had once stood, alone, wounded. And still waiting for someone to come back, she arrived silently, rifle slung low. Boots dusty, West approached. Why didn't you tell us? She shrugged. Would you have believed it? He paused. Yeah, after last night? I think I would have. Callan stepped forward next, not as a commander, but as a man who finally saw something he'd missed. You said you only fire once. She nodded. He looked down at the ridge, then back at her. That shot. It didn't sound like training. It wasn't. Aaron handed her a small device, encrypted, untraceable. It's him, he said quietly. The boy. She took it like it might burn her fingers, pressed it to her ear, and heard the voice she never thought she'd hear again. I remember the dirt, the boy said. Now a teenager. His English better, his voice stronger. I remember your hands. They pushed me. Then you stayed behind. Silence. I thought you died. She couldn't speak, only nod, even though he couldn't see her. Then, softly, do you still have it? The tattoo? She rolled up her sleeve, held her arm out toward the rising sun. The falcon in descent, talons out, wings curved like blades. It's still here, she said into the mic. He laughed. I told them it wasn't just ink. I told them it meant something. The SEALs watched her, a woman they'd mocked, ignored, dismissed, and now they saw her not as a relic, not as an anomaly, but as the standard. The boy's voice returned. They call me Shafak now. It means twilight. I help move people, those who need to disappear. She smiled, tears burning her eyes. You always were a quiet storm. Then, his final words. When I grow old, I'll tell them. The falcon flew once, and when it did, no one saw it coming. She closed the line. The sun was fully risen now. The mission complete, but not recorded, not saluted, and never spoken of again. 3 weeks later, the SEAL unit received their final debrief. There was no mention of Operation Backwater High-Low, no mention of a woman sniper. No gunfire logged, only one note. Field Advisor. Mercer, E. Performance. Above standard. Recommendation. Reinstate if willing. Callan found her at the same range. She wasn't shooting, just watching the wind through the grass. He handed her the paper. She didn't even read it. Tell them I said no. Why? He asked. Her reply was quiet. Because some ghosts don't want resurrection. They just want peace. He turned to leave, then stopped. Was it true? She looked at him. What? The rumor that your last shot, the one they said missed, was actually meant for your own commander. She didn't blink, didn't speak, but her eyes, they held an answer no words could carry. Final scene, walks alone through the old buildings. Civilians pass by. One little girl stops, stares at her tattoo. What's that? The woman smiles. Just a story. The girl tilts her head. Is it true? She kneels down, tucks a braid behind the girl's ear. It was. Once, fade to black. Soft hum of wind. Then title card. A simple woman at the range. Until the SEAL commander froze when he saw her tattoo. Based on fragments too classified to confirm. Inspired by those who never returned and those who never forgot.